Hi, welcome back to the Introduction to Python Programming. This is section 13, debugging. I do realize in the previous section I mentioned working on an exercise that was based on a real world example, but I think it's important that we go through this debugging process first because it is a powerful asset when you are programming. And this lesson won't be too long at all. I think debugging is pretty easy to get and understand, especially on the beginner level. So the lesson objectives for this video include understanding debugging. So debugging code. We can right click and select debug file to start debugging. Now you'll want to place your suspend marks before you click that, because if you have no suspend marks, then the code will just run and execute like it normally would. So how do we place those suspend marks? Well, we click the space between the line number and the code, and that places a suspend mark or that red dot. And then when we debug that code and it stops on that red dot, we can do something called stepping. So we can stepping over moves to the next line, while stepping in allows you to enter a method. So if you're looking at a function on that line 12, if we had stopped or suspended there after starting a debug process and I click step over, well then I'm going to go to line 14. But if I click step in, it's going to go into the next line that's in that add together function. So on the right you can see that the program stops on the suspend mark. We can also check the values of variables that are initialized by the point that we get to that suspend mark. So for example, you can see that variable 1 is equal to 5, variable 2 is equal to 5, and we could expand those special variables to look at the other variables that exist in the Python environment. So debugging is an excellent resource to get used to using when you program, because sometimes you might have accidentally assigned a variable the incorrect error that's not obvious when you look at, or an incorrect value, and it's not obvious when you look at the code. But then when you debug and stop, you'll see the variable and you'll be like, wait a second, this value isn't correct. Let's go back and see how that's being assigned. Now let's jump into the lab environment real fast and go ahead and step through this code within Pycharm. All right, here we are in the lab environment. Let's go ahead and place the suspend mark. I'm going to just click in between the line number and the code, and that red dot means that I've successfully placed the suspend mark. And then I'm going to right click and select debug main. Okay. So when the program ran, while in debugging mode, it stops at the suspend marks. So it's stopped on line 15. And I can look down here and see what the value of variables are, and that's really great, especially in your more complex programs where you have a lot of variable values switching around. You can always double check and make sure that they are the right values. The big two operations we like to perform in this is step into and step over. So first I'm going to step over, which means it's going to move to the next line. So now it's on line 16. I'm going to step over again. And in this one, I'm actually going to step into, because I want to go into this function and walk through that function's actions as well. So I'm going to F7 to step into. Now I'm in that function and I'm using the OS module. I'm testing if the source/file exists, and if it is, I'm going to move it to the destination. So I'm going to need to use step over. So F8. So it passed that, so now it's on line 15 and it's going to move the file. And if I go and look at the file, I can see this is where the file currently is. So when I step over this, it should move the file. So let's go ahead and go back to here and select, is it F7 or F8 to step over? Step over is F8. Now the file should be moved. And it is, it's gone. It should be in the new area, and it is. All right, F8, F8, and the program's over. So what you can do is you can set suspend marks in your programs to check the values of variables and walk through your code and make it much easier to tell what's going on. That is especially helpful as your programs get more complex. It can be a lot to follow and trace through, and debugging can be a game changer when it comes to determining what exactly is going on in your code. So if you start to have any kind of trouble determining what the value of something is, or you're not sure what is happening in a specific part of your program, put a suspend mark there and debug your code. All right, let's head back to the lesson and finish this out. All right, here we are. Now this was a short lesson. There's really no exercises or questions related to this. It was pretty straightforward. Let me know if you had any problems with it in the comments. So that brings us to our section conclusion. We looked at debugging and saw how that would be useful while we're developing programs. It allows us to suspend our program at specific parts, check the value of variables, and step over our code or step into specific functions to see what's really going on in there. In any case, I hope you enjoyed this lesson and I hope to see you in the next. Thank you.